Hello and welcome back to the video. Today I'm doing my 25.7 support tier list. So if you're content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There were only two direct changes towards champions this patch for support role. That was a nerf towards Lulu and an adjustment towards Xerath. In the case of the adjustment, it's landed slightly weak, so they are buffing Xerath in 25.8. In the case of Lulu, they didn't swing hard enough. In fact, her win rate went up this patch, and they are swinging again for a third patch in a row, trying to nerf this champion down to a more reasonable spot. In the case of some of the other things which have changed in support role, we have seen an adjustment to Umbral Glaive. The blackout cooldown on that item has gone from 50 to 90 seconds, which is a pretty hefty nerf. That is almost 100% additional time on the item to wait before you can clear vision again. And the cost has gone down by 100, and the AD has gone up by 5 as compensation. So certain champions have benefited from it slightly. In the case of Pyke, he is the primary user. There are cases where, like, you see, like, your Ashes and maybe your Sellers pick up the item, but nowhere near as frequently as Pyke, who builds it primarily as his core. Let's get into it. So the detail is going to consist of the same four champions. We lead off with Mel, who is being buffed in 25.8. Riot obviously have left the champion intentionally weak for a while, trying to figure out where they want to, like, push her, how they want to balance her, and where she kind of lands after a couple of patches of time. She's weak, there is no doubt about it. She is one of the worst performers across the three roles, and she is being buffed. Right now, we're not a pick I'd really recommend. The buff, I believe, is mostly focused around her laning power and her ability to CS. It should help with trading though, so I could definitely see support mode getting slightly better. Right now though, definitely an underperformer, definitely sits in the B tier. Your two gimmick picks are your Veigar and Malphite. In the case of Malphite, it's primarily of Yasuo. In the case of Veigar, it's primarily of Ziggs. These two picks individually just underperform. They have, like, obviously abilities which kind of make them function here, but not to a very, very successful extent. Veigar Cage and obviously Malphite Ultimate are kind of the things they have going for them. The other pick in the D tier is Ashe. Ashe obviously is a very hard to pilot support pick. You need to be able to really pressure and push advantages in the early game, have some level of synergy with your ADC. I mean, you just don't get that within solo queue. We obviously seen Ashe actually come out today in competitive. T1 brought it out. I don't think the pick's in a great spot for support at the moment. They've kind of nerfed it too much to really be, like, valuable here. It needs too much gold to really function, and you need to forge to, like, a really big lead to just get the value out of a champion. And yeah, she's weak. She's not really that at the moment. In the C tier, we lead off with Hui, who is weak at the moment as well across both, across the same three roles as Mel, mid, bot lane, and support. He is being buffed as well in 25.8, and the changes should do something to move support. They are mostly level skewed though, in the case of both the ultimate and the passive damage going up, so it won't move as much, but could probably see a jump maybe from the C tier to the B tier. Hui needs a bit too much gold at the moment to really be functional as a support option, and is a bit harder to play than some of your more traditional support picks. Amumu, on paper, isn't a bad support pick, and honestly, if you're playing him with MF, he probably bumps up maybe a tier or even 2 tiers. This champion has things going for him. He has good damage, he's easy to play, good CC. The biggest problem he has at the moment is just the itemization. That's just too bad for him. Not having access to things like even Shroud and Radiant Virtue really do hurt Amumu, and I think there could be, we need more items in support, and I think these two in the case of Amumu and some of the other champions close to him, do have a bit of an issue with that at the moment. Silas, if you can pick him in the right spots, can be a fine support option. He's a good flex from mid to support, and yeah, play him in the right spots. This champion can definitely have value. You're mostly going to play him when there is a Malphite in the game, but into, like, Varus Leona lanes, that's a bit of an old school one. He can definitely function quite nicely there. Renata is a pretty heavily competitively bound champion at the moment, mostly paired with the Callista. This pick really does need to be piloted quite well, requires kind of the correct environment, and often demands a lot out of the ADC, more than a lot of the other supports to really get value out of. For solo queue, I just don't think she's it at the moment, but if you are very comfortable on her and you are duoing with someone, there is value to this pick, and I do think she jumps up when paired with, yeah, a duo for the most part, so definitely do keep that in mind. And then Blitzcrank is the final champion of the C tier. Blitzcrank, I would say, has been weak for a while. Obviously, the main value point of Blitzcrank is his hook, but he wasn't really providing, like, enough outside of that and other champions to provide more resources than what Blitzcrank can often do. The buff is a bump up for passive shield and a, I believe, There's one of a change there. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. Might be a W change. It was just something which could give him a bit more like scrapping power early on to the game, allowing him to trade back in certain situations. So Blitz, definitely a champion to watch going into next patch. Oh, it was a Q buff. It was a flat buff to Q. I believe it was like 5 to 25 damage, which is nice. Also adding in power. So Blitz, getting a good buff. Yeah, we'll probably jump back up to the B tier. Right now, though, sits in the C tier. Just not enough things really going for him to kind of like be a more recommendable option. Teemo in the right spots is decent. He obviously is very low elo skewed, and that's kind of what prohibits him from being in the higher tiers. But if you pick him in the right spots and you're playing in like gold, plat, silver, that kind of area, then he can be a valuable support option. Tahm Kench has just been over nerfed. He sits as a low B tier option, also kind of akin to a Mumu, has the problem where he doesn't have a great support item pool for him. He does want heart still for the most part. He has pretty aggressive health, aggressive health ratio with his kit, being his Q. I mean, he would really benefit from something like Radiant Virtue being in the game as well. And yeah, he suffers from similar problems. Same goes for Shen, same goes for Galio, same goes for Zac. All these champions kind of prohibited by their itemization. In the case of Shenvo, he got buffed this patch and is being buffed in 25.8 as well. And it is going to be mostly a support skewed buff. It will obviously benefit him well in top, but 2 seconds of DW at all ranks combined with the change to his Q slow, going from like 5, I think it's just 5% at all ranks maybe. Actually no, it's like 10% at all ranks. Really nice for him, and I definitely would recommend trying out Shen into like your Leona matchups. This pick could definitely have value in the right spots. I think Galio's decent. I mean, Galio's been good for a while. Like Promon is a mid laner, but like as a counter pick and support, as a counter pick and top lane, I do think this pick has merit for it. It's a good flex option. It's not something you're going to bring out in every game, but if you need to like flex him to support, he can definitely be valuable in most spots. Obviously in solo queue, you're picking him like blind is just not it. He really struggles into like certain matchups, and he wouldn't be what I'd recommend as a good option into enchanters, albeit he can maybe play in some of those spots. Yeah, he's also prohibited by his itemization, so it kind of sits like a B tier option at the moment. Pyke benefited from the change to Umbreglaive. Obviously, they gave it 5 AD and, yeah, 100 gold cheaper. The passive does mean more the higher up you go, so it is mostly going to be a low elo skewed buff for a champion, which is obviously very high elo skewed. Pyke moves up to the high end of the B tier. I think if you're very comfortable on him, he can still be a very valuable pick. If you're not, he's probably a pick I wouldn't recommend playing still. In the case of Rakan, sits as a B2 option. Just not as performant in solo queue at the moment, but still very powerful, kind of akin to the likes of Leona, when you like just for like pure utility outputs. In the case of Seraphine, she's a jack of all trades support option. Probably not, just not as valuable. I wouldn't recommend playing her in support as much as like bot lane. I think bot lane Seraphine's very powerful. When you give it a lot of gold, it can be really like strong as a champion. Support though, it's more reliant on like certain pairings, like your Ashe pairing. That is primarily where we see the champion come out and really thrive as an option. If you're looking for something with a bit more agency, a bit more damage, and mostly a gold scaler, then like your LeBlancs and your Zoes are still options here. LeBlanc obviously had her ASU this patch, and yeah, I still think the champion is a relatively decent support option, kind of akin to Elise, except for I have Elise in a tier higher. I think Elise is still very solid here, and probably underrated compared to it's like underrated because she really like dropped down in pick rate when they like tried to do some direct nerfs towards support Elise. Swain, not a support I really recommend, but definitely doing a bit better as a support option at the moment. The buffs he received not too long ago did help him. If you pick him in the right spots into like team compositions which don't really have the damage to kill you, and you can really like just rotate your combos, then yeah, he can be a valuable champion. So I do think there's spots where Swain can be an option. He is very low elo skewed when you play him as a support, and not a pick I'd really recommend holding on to unless you are very comfortable and like you want to play the champion in a more than like some of the spots where he would probably be best in. Okay, so Morgana and Brand, also low elo skewed champions. Morgana's in a really bad spot at the moment. I think this pick is obviously still eating a lot of ban rate, but not really like she isn't even deemed like a support option when you go into like Master Plus. Like people just don't want to see Morgana. They don't value the pick whatsoever. In fact, I believe Morgana jungle is more accepted in higher MMRs than Morgana support at the moment, and I think the champion could do with just some changes. Like I think she's just in a rough spot. Obviously, the pairing primarily you're going to see with the Morgana is for Caitlyn, where you can more consistently rotate trap combos. But Morgana as a champion, if you don't get items, you usually don't do enough damage to really be valuable, and then you just like reliant on your Q, which just isn't a consistent ability, and that can feel quite rough. Brand has been over nerfed. He should be an S tier pick in this MMR bracket, and he just isn't at the moment. I was hoping the buffs in 25.8 would just be a general power buff, but once again it is jungle skewed, and that's unfortunate. I think Brand could really do with some more power for like his solo lanes and his support power outputs. Moving on to actually one other champion in the B tier, and that's Seraph. Seraph drops down from the A tier to the B tier. The chain adjustments ended up being slightly power negative. The buffs in 25.8 will compensate for that, and will probably bump him back up to the A tier. But he's just a pick I wouldn't really recommend as much this patch, unless you're just a one trick and you're or like someone who mains a lot of the champion, and then you should be able to get similar out like consistency of the champion, just a little less damage early, a little more damage later on into the game with the AP you get. Moving up into the A tier is Alistar. So Alistar has actually been one of the better performing like traditional supports, I guess you could say, like if you're pairing with like your Leonas and your Rakans and stuff like that as like support options. Ali is doing a bit better at the moment. I think this pick does have a lot of value. His ultimate's an incredibly powerful tool. He can struggle like the early levels, trying to pilot into some of the more ranged lanes, but yeah, go on into the mid game. This pick has some of the most powerful engage options of any champion. Being able to find like multi-man WQ angles just gives this pick so much potential, and the ultimate gives him so much ability, allows him to be a very solid frontline option, and I think he's in a great spot in the current state of the game. Plus the passive changes they did like a while ago, like I want to say like a year or two ago, have helped him. They were nice changes to receive and give him a bit more scaling. Moving on to the A tier then is Yuumi. Yumi's actually overperforming for average MMRs at the moment. They are nerfing her down in 25.6, which is unfortunate because I don't think she is too offensive in her current state. Obviously, she has the issues where she is kind of like polarizing in some of the pairings she can be, and she can be quite frustrating, but yeah, I don't think she's in the most unhealthy spot she's ever been in for what is, well, I mean, a very unhealthy champion. So unfortunate to see that, but I mean, you can understand why they are nerfing the champion. Still an A tier pick this patch, but will probably get bumped down to the B tier going into next patch. Sona being buffed in the next patch as well, being adjusted in the next patch as well, or buffed. This pick is gaining Q damage. It is like something like from, I want to say like 50 to 150 to like 50 to 190. I think the numbers might be slightly off from what I've said, but it's the general idea, which is big. I think this is the right change for Sona. Encouraging Qmax as more like skill expressive Sona, rather than just for W shield and heal spam Sona, which I mean is kind of traditional at this point. It's good to see. I think being able to opt into 3 or maybe even the full 5 points in Q and then max W is nice for this champion, gives her options, and I think that is the right direction for the pick, because right now I'm not a huge fan of Sona. I think you want to pick this champion in the right spots to really get value out of her. And if you just blind Sona, you will solo lose games. There are games where Sona just isn't the pick, and you should not be blinding it. So definitely something to be aware of. I think having her as like a second, third option in your pool, great for like game health, but if you just blind her into some of these support picks, you will really struggle. I think this champion does have issues at the moment, and seeing the like changes which she's receiving, which I think I even spoke about last patch, is really good to see for the champion. I think that is the right direction for her. Karma is still in the A tier. This pick obviously has kind of moved over to like a more enchantry or like 3 points Q Emax build, and I think it's, I don't think that's what Karma wants to be as a champion. It's kind of unfortunate. Obviously, Malignant's Karma is fine, and you can still play it in certain spots, but I think they probably overswung, if anything, or didn't swing in the right direction with the nerfs. She's still a good champion, and I think if you go late with the Enchanter build, she can be very powerful, and the multi-man shields and movement speed she can provide are very nice. So she sits as an A-tier champion. I just don't know if Riot really went the right direction with her. Nautilus is still solid as an option. He's a good old go-to hook champion. He can provide a lot of CC, point and click, command control, and that is a very valuable thing for a support to provide. Great pick potential, and I think if you're looking for a go-to hook champion, then Nautilus is the champion I would recommend. Some of your more volatile A-tier options, I like your Elises and your Pantheons. I think these picks are still very solid as support options at the moment. Pantheon if you're looking for an AD support option. At least if you're looking for an AP support option, give them gold, they'll do bits within the game. If you fall behind, you will be punished. That is the risk when you are playing these champions. Nico is mostly played as a support option now, with her early oppressive laning phase combined with the powerful snare she provides, being like the main key output she has. I don't really know what Riot's intention with Nico is going long term. Right now, though, she is, I don't want to say bound to certain ADC pairings. Primarily in competitive, you see her paired with the Kalista, but I think in solo queue, as a standalone support, she's a solid option. Gives your team some damage and a good amount of CC, and yeah, the ultimate can be quite powerful as an engaged tool. So I'd say she's a solid A-tier option at the moment. Case of Bard, the damage, or I mean, obviously the haha funny Bard with the new build every single patch is still something which he does. There are loads of ways you can play this champion. His damage output's good though at the moment. Opting into your Electra Q and then your early base damage with your Q gives this champion good value, and I think he's a pretty deserving A-tier option. If you're very comfortable playing Bard, I think he is a great pick to have at the moment, especially paired with the likes of Jhin and your Caitlyn's. He can be a very solid pick. He is skill expressive. If you blunder your E's and you blunder your ultimates, this champion loses a lot of value, so that is just something to be cognitive of. But if you are landing these ultimates well, you're getting good value out of them, I think this pick is a very, very good champion at the moment. Shaco sits within the A tier. The buffs to Shaco were AD skewed, rightfully so. AP Shaco's in a good spot at the moment. The traps are very powerful once you get one or two items online. And as a support, he's a very solid option, mostly playing around that AP build. But you can go AD Shaco in some games. It's not, I wouldn't say it's good by any means, but there are games where you can get a lot of value out of it, especially if you accelerate early game advantages. Zilean is a niche champion, which in the right spots is very powerful. He has good base damage on the Q, combined with the value of his E. He can really be quite a good slot in for certain team compositions. One of my favorite ones is Argot Zilean, being able to have the movement speed on a level 13 Argot, incredibly powerful. That champion can print damage if he can just rotate around different targets, and I think Zilean with your Hecarim, stuff like that, can be a very powerful pick. He's a bit more I'd say champion bound than some of the other support picks, and that is the reward for playing the champion. Pick him in the right spots, he will have good value. Maokai is a pretty simple, good engaging option. He's easy to play, has a very powerful ultimate, goes Trailblazer, which is hidden OP at the moment. I think some people have started catching on with your Fiddlesticks variations, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Trailblazer Maokai, and Trailblazer on your Alistars and even your Nautilus is a good option. Definitely something I would recommend trying out and just seeing if you're comfortable with. And right now, Maokai riding high of that is a very solid A-tier support option in his current state. Senna is in a weird spot. Obviously, she's been pushed more towards these utility builds, your Cleaver variant, and has the Enchanter variant. I don't know if that's correct going long term with the champion. Obviously, there is some concern with the carry Senna orientations we've had with the lethality builds, but I think that is kind of missing at the moment. I do think having that option on Senna before was nice. Maybe they add it back at some point. Obviously, ADC Senna's just bad at the moment, so it's not really you're not really running into that kind of concern. But as a utility pick and an enchanter pick, I still think Senna's a very solid A-tier option. And if you go the right one in the right game, this pick definitely will have value. Does suffer into hook champion. She has very low base armor, so something like a Pike Band can be really valuable, especially with the buff towards Umbral this patch. In the case of Lux and Xerath, Vel'Koz, I would have Xerath usually here alongside these champions. He will be back next patch, but these are your two other AP artillery options to go to in support role at the moment. They're both very solid. They have good values in terms of giving them gold and being able to print damage. The buffs that Vel'Koz received not too long ago helped him a lot and solidified him as a very solid competitive A-tier option. Fresh So I think Fresh might actually be an OP option at the moment. Well, I say OP option, like an S tier option. This pick has been going up in value, and I can definitely see some people starting to prioritize it a bit more. There are builds which can work really nicely in the champion, and he's been buffed a couple of times, like just over, like, yeah, the period of time, which like more recently. I've said like different time frames in like 3 different ways here. Anyway, I digress. Fresh doing a lot better at the moment. Buffs he's received more recently have really helped him, and I think try him out. See if you enjoy Fresh. I think this pick definitely has more value at the moment than he has done in the past, with just general buffs towards his kit and his base damages. Soraka and Milio, and honestly, I'd separate these champions actually. In the case of Soraka, go Enchanter option. Obviously, like go to traditional Enchanter. Pairs really nicely with like your Ashes, for example. Does require some level of like engage from jungle or top if you do want to bring her out, but I think she is still a very good option. Milio traditionally wants to play with some of these ADCs which really benefit from like the additional range, or can synergize really nicely with his W and like echoes of Helio rotations. Right now, yeah, I'd say he's a very solid A tier option, and yeah, if you enjoy Milio, give him a go. The other 3 picks here are Taric, Poppy, and Braum, which are all really good defensive like counter pick options. In the case of Taric, stacks armor really nicely. Obviously has armor scaling within his kit, and pairs really nicely with the likes of Nyla. In the case of Poppy, great into some of the engage options, which are really reliant on like dashes to commit to fights. Works really nicely into the likes of Rel, for example. Braum, I love this champion. I think he's in a really good spot for solo queue at the moment, which is rare because Braum previously was a very pro skew champion. But right now, if you pick him into some of the hook options, you can really comfortably stomp and dominate lane, and his E is an incredibly powerful ability. So these 3 picks, very deserving A tier options. Prohibited primarily by the fact that they're counter picks, and that like limits them from not being S tier. But if they were slightly stronger, I do think they can be S tier options, and Braum is a very close to S tier option. I think this champion's in a really good spot at the moment. Fiddlesticks. So we've started seeing it a bit more. I was kind of aware of like Trailblazer Fiddlesticks as being like a viable option of build like going on him, but this patch specifically, it's really started picking up. I think he will be nerfed in 25.9 if he continues to trend upwards with his pick rate and his win rate. It is an incredibly powerful build at the moment. Gives him obviously good movement speed. It's a cheap item, gives him durability. Fiddlestick support was already a relatively solid option. He has good items to build at the moment, and his ultimate is one of the most powerful within the game. So Fiddlestick support, give it a try, see if you enjoy it. Obviously, I would say it's like pretty, it's blatantly overpowered at the moment, but it's still unpopular. Riot won't nerf it going into 25.8. Might be nerfed in 25.9, but yeah, give it a go. Definitely try it out. Yeah, my recommended engage option is still Rel. Nothing's really changed here. The high end is still practically the same. Janna, great as an anti-engage option, pairs really nicely with AD heavy champions. Tends to be a bit more conditional than the likes of Nami, who I still have as probably the top of the S tier. Pairs really nice with mages more than anything. That is where Nami and Janna can differ a bit as champions. Zyra sits as like the lowest of the S tier options. She could probably be bumped down to the A tier, but there isn't enough of an incentive to at the moment. I still think she's an incredibly good low elo skewed carry option, and with Brand being a bit on the weak side at the moment, I would really recommend just trying Zyra and like picking Zyra in the spots where you would have played Brand maybe. And then Lulu. The changes she received in 25.7, so this patch, the W went from 18 to 16 to just 18 flat, and she lost some Q damage. Her win rate went up. I don't know why. Maybe something to do with the pick rate going down, and like the tourists, as you call them, of the champion, like hopping off the pick and looking towards other things. But she still performs really well. She's great, still a great enchanter option. The 30 flat HP nerf next patch will be meaningful, and she will be a weaker champion. She is a weaker champion this patch as well. I think she probably sits towards the lower end of the S tier, but they definitely be aware that, yeah, going into next patch, I do think she'll probably drop down to the A tier, maybe even B tier if the nerfs are end up being sizable enough to, like, yeah, drop her even further down. Right now, though, my recommended pick of the patch is probably Fiddlesticks. Actually, I would recommend trying the champion out. Other than that, though, enchanter option is Nami, engage options Rel, carry options probably Zyra if you're the lower down you go. If you're going a bit higher, then there are loads of like flexible options there for you. I still think Elise is underrated as a champion. The counter picks of like your Bombs, your Jannas, your Poppies, your attacks are all still really good. And I'd say there's a lot of flexibility in the support role this patch. Just as like some of the options you can go to. So those are my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.